All right. Hey, welcome to this special impromptu episode. I should say mini episode of Whiskey, Wine, and Moonshine. We're calling this one episode 76.5 because it won't be our usual hour-long discussion. In all honesty, this is just us weighing our 3 cents on what's popped up on Twitter again regarding the topic of street harassment. So, yes, you heard Michael Jackson's The Way You Make Me Feel in the background because we figured that this might be the simplest way to break down street harassment one-on-one. So, I'm SoJo, and I am joined by Miss Smart. You could tell I'm kind of off my game because I didn't even give you a sassy name to girl. What's going on?
Yeah, nothing much. I am here.
So why did we decide to do this today? Do we even have beverages?
Bandages.
Beverages.
Girl, no, I'm in my bed.
Okay, good. I don't have a beverage either.
Yeah, so we decided because we were talking about it, throughout the day and just some reflections on some of the things that we've seen and heard with regard to the topic lately. I know that I think I may have mentioned to you today that I was able to think of two instances in my life where I could say that I felt street harassed, but it took a while for me to get to that. And both of them, one was in 1992 when a guy tried to holler at me and my girlfriend and threw ice out the car at us. And then another one was maybe 10 years ago at a Papa John's in Greenbelt, Maryland, outside of Papa John's. And so what made me remember that yesterday, I was actually at the Five Guys that is near where that Papa John's is or used to be. So anyway, that's my story.
Well, you had some interesting stuff that happened on your Twitter page yesterday because I saw when you were talking about an incident that happened to a friend of yours, and I also saw some pushback that a guy gave you, and then I happened to be on Facebook today, and this is not street harassment. We were actually talking about the Bill Cosby situation, and I just saw some craziness pop up in that thread, so which kind of prompted us to kind of do this tonight. So, just kind of let everybody know what was going on your Twitter page.
So basically, I'm watching all these people, men and women alike, not being able to recognize what street harassment is. And before I even tell this story, I've said time and time again, I do not walk, so I don't get I don't get the harassment that other women get. And maybe because I don't walk, even if someone does say hello to me, I'm not like, I don't have like my shoulders hunched in stress and in fear. But I told a story because if people can't acknowledge someone doing something creepy in general, a man doing something creepy in general, there's pretty much no way that they're going to acknowledge, verbal street harassment. So the story was this. I'll say it simply. My coworker was my former coworker, she was on a business trip, and she gets on this flight, and I think it's from like the West Coast to the East Coast, and she's on the window. There's a middle seat that's empty, and there's a guy on the aisle seat. Make a long story short, she starts reading, closes the book, puts it on her lap, falls asleep. Gets to her destination, gathers her belongings, book included. The man never says anything to her. She gets all of her stuff and gets to, I guess, got home maybe, and was thumbing through the book. This man had put a note with his name and number in her book, which means he reached over a seat onto her lap into her personal space. Okay, and what
while she was sleeping, vulnerable position.
Right. And so one of the people, and I don't have his Twitter name, y'all can find on my timeline, was like, oh, well, if he was attractive, it would be a different thing. And, the men that were standing around my coworker told this story, said the same thing. They are upstanding men. They're not like, dirty creeps. They are, men of age with children who are accomplished in their lives, but they too felt like, well, if you were attracted to him doing that would be okay. And it's not okay.
I'm reading from your timeline because I do want to read specifically what this person said. As far as, the guy who you were talking about, he said, hold on. He said he must not have been attractive. If he was, she would have been telling the how we met story. And you responded he invaded her personal space while she, a stranger, was sleeping. Doesn't matter what he looked like. That is creepy. Then the guy came back and said, ain't like he opened her dress or left a creepy message. Had he been her type, the story would have ended differently. So he basically doubled down on that, the behavior that this man did wasn't wrong or couldn't potentially be intimidating. But his excuse was, well, he didn't take it to level 12,
Right. Right.
So it's not harassment. When what I think is when somebody's vulnerable and they're sleeping, especially as a woman, that's level 8, level 9. So I just wanted to read specifically what the guy said.
But I will say too that I think it was Leonard Brothers who said when I first started telling the story, he was cool with it, but then he thought about it. And I think that's what's missing, the willingness to think about it.
Right. And I think that's what's not happening on social media when the conversation is happening. And it's why, because a lot of guys that I'm seeing are becoming annoyed by women constantly bringing up street harassment or harassment in general, or things that happen when we talk about rape, when we talk about all of these things, when we go into the, hashtag not all men, all those things, they get annoyed. But it's because men aren't taking the time, and not all men, but not the hashtag not all men, but they aren't taking the time to listen to the women's stories and possibly go back and revisit some situations that they may have done or their friends may have done that they thought was okay, but truly was not.
Right. The other thing that Twitter exchange made me think about is whether or not I, as a woman, am a creep and only get away with it because I'm a woman and no one physically fears me.
Yeah, you asked me that question, and I was like, I think you asked me the other day, if we were men, would we be considered creeps? And I said, hell yeah. But now, I mean, I'm a woman. I mean, I'm, I'm not even the average height of a, a woman. So I'm not intimidating. Even when I try to be, I play gangster or I play, whatever, people normally think I'm cute. They pat me on the head and tell me to go about my business. So men don't realize that their presence can be intimidating, even when they think that they're not. It may not even be your size. It may be a situation that this woman has experienced. You may remind her of something that happened, and just because you don't think you're being creepy, if a woman says, hey, that behavior is not all right, it's not for you to go back and double down on why what you did wasn't creepy.
Right, but she can't say, hey, what you're doing is creepy.
Nope. And here's the thing too. I wanted to go back to talking about the definition of harassment, because there's a dictionary definition and then there's a legal definition. Because we talked about this yesterday. All of this came about because we were having a conversation offline. And the dictionary definition says the aggressive pressure or intimidation. Which kind of, people say, well, that leaves it open to interpretation, because I don't think I'm being intimidating. Why is this person think that I'm intimidating when I'm not? But then when you look at the legal definition, it also talks about that it's generally defined as something that annoys, threatens, intimidates, alarms. There's several other different words that go to describe exactly what harassment is. And some actions may cause those reactions in people. You following a woman down the street, that's annoying. That could be threatening. It could be intimidating. It also could be alarming. So,
yeah, you certainly won't hear any argument here. I mean, as I always say in these conversations, I don't walk. Now, I don't walk, but I don't tell other women that their experience is invalid or their feelings are invalid.
Because how she's feeling at that time may be all of those things that are described in that definition. I thought it was interesting. I think GD215 on Twitter actually tweeted out a few hours before we started this. He asked for guys who have gone back to reassess their behavior based on what they've seen women tweet about street harassment.
Mhm.
And a guy that I follow, Five Fifths, he actually said, he said, learn how to holler at women on the strip in the AUC. The unabashed A shawty leering and pacing for a long time. And we talked about this a long time ago on one of our very first podcasts about how even on a college campus, guys hanging on the yard did do a lot of street harassment. The same type of behavior, but nobody ever called it street harassment when you were on the set at FAM or whatever, the yard was at your college. There was street harassment going on.
And I think the other thing too, I saw this sort of coming out. I'm glad you mentioned universities, because it seems to be this underlying idea that only if you're walking through the hood, only if you're with former criminals, only if, like, all these onlys. But the reality of it is, educated people do this, black people do this, white people do this, check other people, all the others. There is something in society that this is something kind of that crosses all all areas. But I will say, actually, having said that, this will sort of go against what I just said. Depending on the setting, the same man who will act a complete monkey in Manhattan won't act a complete monkey in the grocery store when he's by himself without that great of an audience, or where it seems like he may be his behavior may not be the norm.
Going back to the opening, the Michael Jackson video, which I guess we're going to talk about in a second, which was like, I never realized until you brought it up and I went back to look at it for the trailer, that was straight up street harass, like a video that everybody loved and a song that everybody loved was pretty much approved street harassment.
Yep.
Through the entire video up until the very end when she kissed him. It was like, from the very beginning. But the way the video started out was guys sitting there talking about this woman walking by. They all had their comments, which she could hear. And then them hyping Michael up to go holler at her. And like you said about the behavior being different in different settings, like, that's exactly what you just said. Like, he started running after her, doing all that aggressive humping and all that stuff. Because he was in a setting with a bunch of men where they were egging it on.
Yep, that audience, that group think. And there's also the piece of knowing that there's not going to be any consequence.
Right.
Because you're not probably, these people who are doing this, they're usually not gonna do it at their job. Obviously, we have the whole idea of the construction worker hollering at the woman as she walks past, but typically, in most, even at the McDonald's, you're not going to get that level of aggression. Now, I will say that the guy who did that to me worked at Papa John's, and honestly, you know what? So this is the thing why that story didn't really stick out to me in all the times that we talked about this, because after it happened and I took refuge, I went into a store, I thought to myself, this must be all he has. You work at Papa John's and you're clearly really old.
But this is it. But here's the thing. We're talking about street harassment for all intents and purposes of this podcast, but it's beyond street harassment because the guy, that guy in that setting may not run after you in the street harassment, but that same guy in an office setting would be the creepy dude sexually harassing you at your cubicle. If he doesn't think you're the type of person to go report him to HR. So the mentality and the type of ownership of women and thinking that they can, sexualize women or whatever, that mindset is still there for that kind of guy.
I guess what I was saying was that part of this, I think, and I think this happens in a lot of things, is men and or women who feel like they don't have control of their own space and their own being, their own lives, seek to get that control elsewhere. So his life didn't turn out as it would as it should have been. And here I come, this uppity girl coming out the nail salon, dotting my head. Who did I think I was? Like he felt like, he should be able to bring me down a notch. That's what he could control. He couldn't bring himself up a notch because life had already dealt him a raw deal. He had tattoos on his face. I mean, anybody with tattoos on their face working at the Papa John's, raw deal. Life ain't been no crystal stair.
I think on the rise of social media too has taken those same types of guys and given them a platform so that they can also do online harassment as well as street harassment, because we're starting to see, like, we talked about on episode 76, sometimes you don't realize just how many creeps there are until you get involved in social media. Then you start really realizing that some people are kind of dangerous.
Yeah, you know what? Just an aside. I don't know if you read the thing today on Very Smart Brothers, or today or yesterday, where one of the champ, I think, wrote about how he was here in D.C. and his now wife and a friend of theirs ended up walking ahead of him, and he got to witness it wasn't planned, but he got to witness how they are treated when they are not under the cover of man, and it wasn't very comfortable for him. And I would encourage people, men in particular, to go out with your daughters, your sisters, your nieces, and let them walk 3 people ahead of you and see what happens. A populated area, and just see. It'll probably be very uncomfortable for a lot of men, particularly men with daughters, because I don't think that a lot of them really think about what happens when their child, and I'm being very specific here, and child may have to walk down the street.
Here's what he said. And the title of that post was My Street Harassment Story. And he said, my now wife and I drove down from Pittsburgh that day, blah, 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 blah. We stopped and got something to eat and eventually met up with our homegirl to walk, to the screening together. He said it was a 15, 20-minute walk from where they were to the location. During the trip, he received a text he needed to reply to, so he slowed his stride and stopped for a few moments. They slowed too, but he told him to keep walking and he'd catch up. He said about a minute or so later, by this time they were 50 feet ahead, totally engrossed in their own conversation, and instead of catching up to them, he just kind of stayed behind, whatever. He said as he watched one black, one Afro-Latina, both dressed like women who'd gone to work that day and were attending the screening that evening, walked while talking to each other, laughing and enjoying the weather. He watched as their conversation was interrupted at least 3 or 4 times by guys attempting to talk to them. "Hey, sexy ladies," he heard one say. "Where y'all going? I want to come." Those are typical comments, like that people, hear in those situations walking down the street. Said another. One even started following them. It wasn't a close follow. He was maybe 25 feet behind them, and they probably didn't even know he was there. Creepy. He didn't write creepy, but in my mind, I'm thinking creepy. But he definitely got up from where he was sitting and started walking in their direction when they walked past him. And Champ said, and this was when I decided to catch back up to them.
Yep. And I think that also speaks to them not even knowing. Like that. You can talk about the people who actually verbalize, the men who verbalize something to you, but there's also probably a good number who do that quiet follow.
Yeah, and like going back to this Michael Jackson video, because this is really what got us talking. I would really like for a dude or a group of dudes to live tweet that video and what they see in it, because especially when we came out, we were teenagers and we were kids, so we really didn't see what we were watching. But watch it now as an adult from start to finish, and then tell me, because that is an experience of a woman walking down the street. You know what I'm saying? Then tell me if you still think by the end of that video that what you saw was okay.
Well, the thing is, okay, two things. One, I can see a certain type of man justifying it because at the end she does kiss him, so the ends justify the means.
But
That's one.
here's the other
Two,
thing. The only reason she kissed him, well, first of all, going back to a real situation, a lot of times women will stop and talk to dudes and will stop and give them what they want because if they're trying to get away, they're afraid that that guy is going to end up aggressively raping her. You
mm-hmm.
know what I'm saying? So she'll turn around and act like, "Oh yeah, I'll give you my number. I'll do whatever." But the other part of that is that she kissed Michael because she was afraid because all of these other thugs started coming up out of the shadows like they were about to accost her, and she's looking for the nicest one of the street harassers.
Yep. But
That,
see, here's the thing.
that's
Why was
crazy.
she Wait, why was she dressed like that and why was she walking down the street by herself at night?
Oh, girl, getting
Yeah,
on that. Hold
yeah.
on, getting on that even today because we said we were only going to do this for 30 minutes. It's almost 8:30. I got to say this though. Um there was I think it was the Soul Asylum on Twitter got into it today because she was talking about harassment. She has in her avatar a picture of her where she's turned around. She's turned around and she's looking back at the camera smiling. Her basically her behind is part of the avatar. She's not naked. She has on leggings and a tank top, but she has a nice figure. So this guy says, "Oh, I was about to listen to what you said and then I saw your avatar and and she went off like she was, because basically she did that avatar on purpose. She's,
Hmm.
proud of what she looks like, blah 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 blah. But it went into this whole thing about, well, why is she dressed like that, thinking she's a feminist? And officially I said, just, and he was being facetious, but he said just because she's looking for attention doesn't mean she's looking for it from you. Stop harassing her. But he was being hella facetious by it. But that's the damn truth.
Hmm.
Maybe she was walking down the street because the girl in the video really did have on a bodycon dress.
Hmm.
And maybe she was looking for attention. It doesn't mean that she's looking for attention from you. If she walks past you and doesn't acknowledge your presence, or if she walks past you and acknowledges your presence and keeps going, she's not looking for that attention from you. So stop.
Well, I'd like to go back to something you said about when that song and video came out. I don't recall any adult in my life finding anything wrong with what we were watching on that screen.
Nope. It was one of the most popular videos.
Right, but I say that to say that I don't know that um, women, older women knew to have a problem with this or publicly have a problem with this, or maybe they just didn't have the means to get together and talk about it like we have social media, or maybe they were all under the quote unquote cover of men, so it was less aggressive.
But
But
it's funny. We're all under the cover of men. I mean, on our podcast. And the first thing, and I know what you said about we didn't, like, maybe back then they didn't know that that was a problem. But within the first minute and a half, when Michael ran up to her and put his arm around her,
mhm.
you saw me in our instant message group. I was like, what the fuck? He just touched her.
Yep. But that you'll find that in many videos. I mean, let's think about, I can't think of the name of the song, but it's a Snoop or Dr. Dre song where they pull the girl's bikini down.
Oh, yeah.
There's, a scene where they spray the girl because she's walking past and they just spray her with a beverage and stuff. There are several videos
Like
that take.
like that and like this and whatever that song
Right.
is.
Yeah, that's a rap video, but and I wish I had prepared better for this. There are several videos along with that same street harassment thing. It's been normalized. So you're creating one situation. As women, we're saying, hey, no, leave women alone. Let women just walk and be about their business. But then you're pushing a lot of images that say the exact opposite, and it's not just like old music either.
Right.
So, I mean, I think we need to do a better job of addressing it when we see it on television, particularly when we are talking to and around young people, saying, hey, how do you feel? What happens when you go out and whatnot. But also, stop talking to girls about it. Talk to your sons and your nephews and your brothers.
Right. Because that's the problem, is that instead, and here's what was bothering me on Twitter, was that men were taking a whole lot of time arguing with women about how they felt, as opposed to having conversations with each other about what they were doing, or how that could have possibly been something that may have intimidated a woman in their life at some point.
But when they did, engage other men, it became like, I saw, who was it? Who was it? Oh my God, I can't. I'll look for it right now. But I saw this one exchange that exhausted me, because the guy, the arguing ridiculous party, um, was just like, well, telling the other guy, well, when you see it, you should say something. Oh, you must be a punk because you're not gonna say anything, blah blah blah. And I actually tweeted to one of them. I was like, yo, like, it seems to me that the weaker man is the one who can't keep his mouth shut. Like, it is so hard for you not to say anything. Like, your game is so whack that the only way you can get her attention is yelling obscenities or, just making her feel comfortable. Nah.
Yeah, and I think it goes back to what you were saying earlier too, is that really the end game I don't think the end game for any of those guys is to actually get the girl.
No, it's not.
At all. At all. It's a power thing, like you said, to make her feel a little bit off her game, or to impress the other dudes in the pack. Mm-hmm. None of them are to actually engage in conversation with that woman.
It was Insanity. It was Chris from the Insanity.
Oh, I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah. Who was going back and forth with this clown. Yeah.
Yeah. So
wait. Because if we make street harassment laws, that's gonna put all the black men in jail. Or here's a crazy idea. Stop doing it.
Right. Stop trying to not, that even takes me to the Cosby conversation, where the argument they started getting on is every time a black man comes up, then, somebody wants to knock him down. So we should not even have this discussion about Bill and sully his, reputation and his legacy or whatever. How about you just don't have those things going on around you?
Mm-hmm.
I know, and I still hadn't seen that street harassment video that we were talking about, so I'm not, I still didn't see that, but I did see the link that you shared where they talked about how they edited the white dudes out.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not a black man problem, it's a male problem, period.
But here's the thing. I find that the whole making this about race is just subterfuge. Because let's say, for kicks and giggles, let's just say that it is something that black men and Hispanic men do. Stop doing it. Like to take it and say, oh, they're only focusing on black men. Well, so what if aren't you a black man?
Then how about you raise your black sons better so that they don't do that. So that they don't do that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's real simple. But it's so much easier, and
you say it's simple. And I think we said this the very first. We need to find that podcast that we did about street harassment. But one of the things we said was that, because we were talking about what we could do, and then we realized, it's not about what we could do as women. It's about what guys need to start doing among themselves. Like, it's simple, but part of that simplicity is to have guys take ownership for it and start taking ownership of each other. Pull each other's cards. Raise your boys not to do that. Talk to your boy. If y'all are out somewhere and you see him about to do something that's going to creep somebody out, maybe you think, well, I know he's a good guy, and I'm putting good in quotes. Maybe he's a good guy and he's not going to do whatever, but how about touch him and say, hey, dog, that might creep her out a little bit.
Yeah. I think the other thing, too, is these men who are, like, supporting and justifying the situation have a very hard time putting themselves in a woman's shoes. And even if and those who do come around, they often only come around when it relates to them, when it's their sister, daughter, mother, or something, being having this done.
Mm-hmm.
So that's yet another problem. But that I would suspect, and I have no proof of this, I would suspect people who lack the ability to consider multiple sides probably do that in other areas of their life.
Yes.
It's not just on this topic in which they're just sternly only going to see it from this way. The other thing I think influences this is that so I may have done a creep thing with my current when I first met him, and I did physically touch him, and it worked. I mean, so I think part of it too is that men often are very receptive when women do creepy things or creep things, or just to be clear, I didn't go yo 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 boo. I didn't do anything like that. But I think a lot of them really think that why shouldn't she be happy to get this? Why shouldn't it be okay for me to yell at her? I'd be cool with women, approaching me and approaching. That's the word. That's the key word there.
I think about, we used to in college, we played this game of guess where you're from. This is a girl game, and we would play it with guys on the yard. Like as they walk by, we would among ourselves, we were kind of creepy, like the dudes on the yard, and we would pick out a guy and be like, guess where he's from. We'll be like Alabama, or whatever. And so one of us would kind of like, stroll up to him and say, "Hey," we wouldn't say, "Hey, shawty," but I mean, we'd be like,
"Stop lying." Yes, you would.
But we'll be like, where are you from, or da 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 da, and the guys say Alabama, and then all the girls, I mean, that kind of thing. But at the same time, and I know guys will be like, well, okay, why can you do it? And then if we had a game, guess where she's from, and we did it, all of a sudden we'd be harassers. But you also have to understand that as a man, your presence can be physically threatening, and I think that's the thing. It's the physical threat or whatever that kind of flips that script, and just err on the side of caution.
You know what? So women can play the where's he from game, just like black people can get away with saying nigger.
And you, as a Caucasian, bet's not.
Yeah, hey, I mean, you can try it, but you probably shouldn't. Hey, people, they understand that.
Or like Phenom said, it's all fun and games until you flip the script about cops pulling black men over.
Or a gay man approaching them, or gay men approaching them.
So, just something to think about. But like we said, this isn't a full show. We just wanted to kind of hop on real quick because we were typing furiously with our thumbs on Instant Messenger. And since we're no longer bloggers,
right,
we decided to podcast about it. So if you're catching this for the first time, there are usually three of us. We're Whiskey, Wine, and Moonshine. Our whiskey, Lady Buddha, is off on her honeymoon. Wine is Miss Smart, and I am Moonshine, SoJo. And Smart, you want to tell them where you can be reached?
Right now, I can be reached on Twitter at think_P_smart.
Cool.
That's it.
And I'm SoJo. You can reach me on Twitter at SoJoXOXO. And collectively, if you Google Whiskey, Wine, and Moonshine, you will find us everywhere on our website, Facebook page, Twitter, iTunes, Stitcher, Podomatic, all that stuff. And we also hang out live every Tuesday at 8 o'clock, and we will be back this Tuesday at 8 o'clock with a very special topic. We'll also let you guys call in and kind of chat with us. But for right now, we're going to go ahead and sign off because I think Miss Smart wants to catch Scandal in a second. So
if I can stay up, I'm nestled in my bed right now.
Yeah, I'm not watching it either. I'm finna call it a night. But that's it for right now, guys. Cheers.
Cheers. Bye-bye.